Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It was 1972 when I stopped chemically straightening my hair and decided to go natural. Wearing a bush or afro was frowned upon in corporate America, unless you work in a creative field like television, for an example. But that was more than 50 years ago, and times have changed. Or have they? Up next on Another View, the continuing issue of Black women and natural hairstyles, particularly in professional settings. Sadiqa Reynolds, CEO of Perceptions Institute, is with us. Stay tuned. Another View will be right back after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Be it curly, straight, braided, locked, twisted, or just there, Black women are embracing their natural hair and styling it in very creative ways. But not everyone is on board, especially in the workplace. It's such an issue that 20 states, including Virginia, have passed Crown Act legislation. CROWN stands for Create a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair. So what have African American women been going through with respect to their natural hair? Joining us to talk about this is Sadiqa Reynolds. She is CEO of Perceptions Institute, which did a major study called Good Hair. How are you, Sadiqa?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being with us. And before we start our conversation, Sadiqa, I want to bring in Media Operations Specialist Danielle Saunders. Now, Danielle answers our phones for Another View. She's a young woman, and I want her to share an experience that she shared with us during our production meeting this morning. How you doing, Danielle?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So can you share with the audience the story you shared with us in production this morning?
Absolutely. So I am a classical musician at heart, and I've been doing it for a while, and I got a chance when I was a freshman in high school to do a really kind of step up orchestral program, and it was very rare for people in my school district to go, and it was two of us from my particular high school, both of us Black women, and we were very excited. And I remember once we got through the actual audition process and we got into our particular groups that we were performing in, I had gotten second stand. So in an orchestra, you have, for a double basis, you share stands. So first stand is your first and second chair. And second stand is third and fourth chair. So I had gotten third chair, second stand, which was really, really big for a freshman. And I remember come to find out this person was not even involved in the staff. And it was a parent. And she told me basically that I needed to have a more polished and professional look for the upcoming performance.
What was your hairstyle?
I was a loose natural at the time, so I had a little baby afro.
And she told you needed to look more professional?
Yes. And I remember I did not know exactly what that meant, but I knew I felt embarrassed. And I remember going home to tell my mom, and my mother that night washed and blow dried my hair and stretched it out even bigger and did the most beautiful braid out I've ever seen in my life. And so I came back on show day and it was even bigger.
But how did it make you feel? Because something else happened to you that night.
Yes. I think that was the first time I really experienced a anxiety attack and just worried about how I was being presented in front of an audience doing something that I loved. And that was something I never thought at 14 I would experience.
You told me you went home and you cried.
Yes,
all
I
night.
did.
Okay. Thank you, Danielle, for sharing that. Sadiqa, that's not an unusual story that we hear about our young women and our older women, for that matter, when it comes to our hair.
No, and actually, I could not hear Danielle's story, but I heard your questions, and I certainly heard you say that she went home and cried. And I think that what is happening to us across the country is what has always happened. Anything that is different than or seen as different than that of the majority, we are being othered and being told that it is less attractive. And that's what we found with the Good Hair study in 2016. Yeah. Less attractive, less professional. These are things that white women think about us. Certainly we know, white men, powerful positions, the same sort of treatment of us. Anytime it is anything different than what the majority sees as acceptable. So I'm so sorry for what Danielle experienced, even though I could not hear her.
Yeah, she received a high place in her classical orchestra in high school as a freshman. And one of the mothers, a mother, came up to her, a white woman, who said to her, "You need a more professional look." She had an afro.
So no conversation
about,
so no congratulations
right.
on being able to play so high in the orchestra.
Exactly.
No conversation around, her exceptionalism, her talent, none of those things. But instead, let me tell you what it is that I don't like about you. Let me tell you why people may not be able to really hear you. They may listen, but they don't really hear you because your hair is a distraction, and that's part of the narrative. That's what we hear in this country, and that's why you're seeing the Crown Act be passed in 20 states, because we really do need proactive protection. People cannot be left to their own devices in this case, and so that's why I think we're seeing more and more states pass the Crown Act to protect Black women.
So tell us about your findings in the Good Hair study, because just the key findings, I can read just a couple of them and then get you to respond. So it said, on average, white women show explicit bias towards Black women's textured hair. They rate it as less beautiful, less sexy attractive, and less professional than smooth hair. Black women in the natural hair community have significantly more positive attitudes towards textured hair than other women, including Black women in the national sample. Millennial naturalistas have more positive attitudes towards textured hair than all other women, and Black women perceive a level of social stigma against textured hair, and this perception is substantiated by white women's devaluation of natural hairstyles. So tell us a little bit about how you did this study, and ultimately how something that you would think would not be such a major issue is once again another way of perpetuating discrimination and racism in this country.
Well, absolutely. And I want to say that this study was done in 2016. And what we normally do with studies, we'll do focus groups, but we also have a thing, implicit association test, where people take tests to, see which of these things. We all remember the doll test that we saw on television, which doll do the children choose, those sorts of things. I think that, number one, I really do believe, and I hope, and this is anecdotal at this point, where we are going to launch a new study soon. I hope that what has changed over the last 6 or 7 years in our country, that because we do now have a Supreme Court justice who is wearing her hair natural, because we do have a first lady who showed up in braids a few months ago.
Actually, she was on CBS this morning with her braids.
With her braids, right. So what I am hopeful, as a woman who changes my hair constantly, I wear it natural. I haven't had a relaxer in probably more than, 16 years. So, what I think is that the world is changing, but the world is not changing fast enough. The those folks in the majority who are really the decision makers, unfortunately, the policy makers, we are seen as different then and not accepted. There are all kinds of biases, and so we have to deal with those things. And one way to do that is to proactively pass laws that actually protect us.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and the other part of it is that representation matters, and that's what I want to get to when I talk about the Supreme Court justice or the former First Lady showing up with natural hair. Being able to turn on a television and see yourself. We have a colleague who works a lot with, cartoons and what does the character look like? What does the hair look like? And Aya talks a lot to us about what the experience is for her child to be able to turn on a television, to see hair that looks like hers, that is curly and tight, and to identify that in a positive way. So often those things about us, our hair, skin color, they're demonized. And so I think that our country has moved somewhat. I do not think it is enough, and it certainly isn't fast enough, like on all of these other issues that we work through. But in this case, I hope that we will see more and more legislative changes.
Well, I'm going to share something with you because I don't know if I hope your optimism carries over.
I'm always
I really
optimistic.
do. Okay. But let me throw out the phone numbers first, 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about natural hair and the issues that particularly Black women face in terms of wearing their hair naturally and in the workplace. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So the Crown Act did a research study for 2023, Sadiqa, and this is what they revealed. Black women's hair is 2.5 times more likely to be perceived as unprofessional. Now, this was a workplace research study.
Absolutely.
Approximately 2/3 of Black women, 66%, changed their hair for a job interview. Among them, 41% changed their hair from curly to straight. Black women are 54% more likely, or over 1.5 times more likely, to feel that they have to wear their hair straight in a job interview in order to be successful. Black women with coily, textured hair are 2 times as likely to experience microaggressions in the workplace than Black women with straighter hair. Over 20% of Black women 25 to 34 have been sent home from work because of their hair. Nearly half, 44%, of Black women under the age of 34 feel pressured to have a headshot with straight hair. And 25% of Black women believe they've been denied a job interview because of their hair, which is even higher for women under 34.
And I bet that number is even higher than denial on the job interviews because that's really much more difficult to prove.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're not sending someone home. But and still I say there has been some improvement. Again, it is not as fast as we need it to be. But, I think it is extremely frustrating to imagine someone being asked to go home because of their hair. That is extremely frustrating. I want to go back to something you asked me about the good hair study. That particular study, we had more than 4,000 participants, and so there were samples of men and women and also naturalistas, who were able to take the test and give us the feedback that we have now shared with the country. And I think that we also need to look at the data, be able to compare the data. So where were we in 2016 versus where we are now in 2023? Because, anecdotally, we can look around and we see news reporters now who have natural hair. We can turn on our local news, turn on our national news, and we're seeing that. We're not seeing everyone. And we certainly don't always know all of the consequences and the challenges that people have had in order to be in the bank, with their hair in braids or in an afro or whatever they might choose, but we certainly do see that more often. So I think even the conversation increases our ability to see ourselves be represented in different markets and in different areas of professional life.
So when you did the focus groups and when you guys found out information, what was the overriding feeling or thought about why textured hair was considered unprofessional?
I mean, it's the bottom line, because it's not like white people's hair, and it just showed that white women rate black women's textured hair as less attractive. They see it as less attractive, less professional. I mean, it's anything that is different than that which is in the majority. This is what we see in our country.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to Mary Beth in Smithfield. Hi, Mary Beth. You're on the air.
Hi, I'm white, but I have 4 minority adopted children, and I often am asked to go to talk to organizations who promote adoption, and I am continually surprised by people commenting about their fear or a resistance in adopting minority children because they say they can't do their hair, which I am always surprised to hear. I know that's not right on the topic of your conversation, but it's somewhat related and surprising to me.
Well, and it goes to, once again, people having to deal, but making hair an issue as opposed to someone's ability, education, expertise in a field, which is what you think you would look for in a job. Were you able to hear her?
I did.
Okay.
I could hear her.
Okay.
And I'm hearing a little bit of an echo behind myself. But I'll tell you, a lot of this is about anti-blackness, too. It's not just really about hair. It's the understanding that our hair is a part of our story. It's a part of how we communicate who we are. And so at a time in our country when we are being more and more pressed down, you don't want to talk about critical race theory. We don't really want to have conversations about where we are in this country and what we've done to help build this country. Mm-hmm. This is just another way to silence us, to say, you aren't good enough. And so we really do have to have women like your caller, because I'm under the impression that she did not resist adopting children whose hair was different than hers, and she's found a way to do it. And I think we have to talk more about what is at the core of some of the policy decisions, the things that we do and the things that we don't do, what is found to be acceptable in America and what is found to be unacceptable. And at the core of that is anti-blackness. I mean, it really is about not allowing us to just have the ability to move about freely in this country that we have worked so hard to help build and that we love so much.
Absolutely. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Doing the research for this show today also, Sadiq, what really struck me too was our young girls. Some of the stats that are out there. So 53% of black mothers say their daughters have experienced racial discrimination based on hairstyles as early as 5 years old. So in 2023, back in the 50s and the 40s and 60s for that matter, and 70s, we're telling our kids about, your hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel when you get stopped by the police and, all those things to keep them safe. And now we also have to incorporate a conversation about our hair.
Yeah. And we've also, I think we've made it clear that comments about skin color are unacceptable. And so, again, people find other ways to say you're not good enough. You don't belong here. You shouldn't be here. Maybe you're smart, but I can't even tell if you're smart because I can't see past your hair. And so we have to be, it is just sad that we have to have legislation to say my child should be able to wear cornrows to school if they so choose. I should be able to go and work as a teller in a bank. I shouldn't need legislation for those things, but we do, and it's because we have so many underlying issues that are really feeding into this in our society.
Yeah, and it is amazing to me that we have to actually have a law. So as I said before, the Crown Act is in 20 states, including Virginia. Now, it's not a state law. I'm talking about some areas close to where we are here. While it's not a state law in North Carolina, It is law in the following cities: Asheville, Buncombe County, Chatham County, Charlotte, Durham, Orange County, Greensboro, Raleigh, and Winston-Salem. And I found it interesting that a lot of those cities, Sadiq, correlate or are home to most of the HBCUs in North Carolina.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I'll tell you, that is where our hope lies. Our hope really does lie in young people who are able to see so much more. They are experiencing the world in ways that we never imagined. And so my hope is that they will continue to define what is acceptable and what is not. And there are people who, resent all of the options that our young people have. But I think they are the hope really for our future, because they are saying we won't tolerate this. I even look at what happened in Tennessee with the legislators who were expelled and the young people who stood up. I mean, that is the future of our country, I pray. And hopefully we will live to see a day when we don't need a Crown Act. But until then, we can't assume that people are just going to, do the right thing.
Exactly. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call if you've had any issues in terms of your hair and your workplace in particular. We'd love to hear from you. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Andrea joins us. I'm not sure where Andrea's calling from. Hi, Andrea. Where are you?
I'm in Hampton Roads.
Hi. What's your question or comment?
Well, I basically, and it is echoing just a little bit. I'm in between. I'm part Hispanic, but non-Black. And, I have worked with many women who run to work in a top knot or a low bun. And these women don't get policed for their hair. Doesn't look great, but they are not getting sort of affronted in the way that Black women are being forced to defend their hair. And I guess from a standpoint of like allyship and, we need to get together and not make Black women defend themselves.
Yeah.
Thank you for that comment. Sadiqa?
Oh, I first of all, I just want to say thank you and say that I completely agree. I think Black women deserve to have allies on this issue and so many other issues. And I think that we also have to be willing to have these conversations and call the behavior out. And we have to pass legislation to protect us. I mean, because it's necessary. I mean, you're talking about how people provide for their families. And so you find yourself, in between a rock and a hard place. You want the job, you want to be able to take care of your family, but at the same time, you want to be able to express and communicate who you are, what you believe, or just how you were feeling that day. Everything is really not that deep all the time. But whatever it is, it's about autonomy and the ability to decide for yourself. Why should some group be deciding how we get to wear our hair? It doesn't make sense. And so I say again, our hair is a part of our story. It's a part of how we communicate. And if you are asking people to change their hair to fit into your workplace, that's not an inclusive workplace.
Absolutely.
It just can't be.
So, Sadiq, in the study that you've done and subsequent follow-ups, is the acceptance of natural hair, now I'm talking about within the Black community, is it generational? Because I know that there's some older folks who are struggling with understanding natural hair too, and which is an issue.
Great question. That is an interesting question, and I can't answer that question. I would imagine that it is. I think our hair has changed. Oh, you remember good times and all that, and there were periods where everybody was wearing afros, and even then it wasn't acceptable to white Americans. And then we transitioned in the relaxers and all this. So I can't say to you that in the study we were able to tell whether it was generational in our community, but certainly that anyone who's wearing their hair, people who belong in, who identify in the natural hair community, are more likely to show a preference for Black women's textured hair, obviously, right? The majority of participants, regardless of race, show some sort of implicit bias against Black women's textured hair. I mean, so there are some challenges even in our own community, but I always remind people to think about who has the power, who has the ability to decide what happens to you, where you work, what what are the things that impact the economy of your household, and oftentimes that's not other Black people. Instead, that is people, in places of power with privilege who are deciding for us. So I think that is why, we're focusing in on this legislation in this country so that people can be able to take care of their families, and they're free from harassment, they're free from bias. If people have thoughts about their hair, they keep them to themselves, and they understand that people would be judged based on the work that they're doing and not, how they chose to wear their hair on a particular day.
Exactly. It's all about doing what you need to do to make it and to be able to stay there. You're absolutely right.
And can I?
Sure.
I just want to tell
Go
you
ahead.
too that the Crown Act, the effectiveness really has, I think, mostly gone untested. I don't think that we know necessarily, what's going to happen as if the lawsuits ever come in. Are people really, or do we need lawsuits? Will people just say, okay, there's a Crown Act? Because even with the conversation, even with seeing, a Crown Act being passed in 20 states and in the cities you talked about, right? What may be happening is that these businesses are realizing, we need to ease up on this. We've been out of order, or it's not worth the potential lawsuit. That's probably more likely, right? It's not worth the potential lawsuit. We're not even going to go there. We will no longer comment about what people, how people choose to wear their hair, how Black women choose to wear their hair. And so that begins to change cultures as well.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about Black women and their natural hair with Sadiqa Reynolds, CEO of Perceptions Institute, which did a major study of attitudes about natural hair called Good Hair. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Jay joins us from Newport News. Hi, Jay. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. This is a great topic that you're talking about. This has been going on since the beginning of time. And I would just like to hear your guest's opinion on African American perspective on hair. If you remember seeing a movie by Spike Lee called School Days, they were talking about good hair and bad hair in that movie. I've seen it, and I guess it was addressing the people that had more of an African style or those who had more of a Caucasian style. And I'd appreciate your opinion about that.
Okay, thank you, Jay, for the call. Could you hear him, Sadiqa?
I couldn't hear everything.
He was saying that there was a movie, Spike Lee did the movie where they talked about good hair versus bad hair. And he wanted to hear your opinion about how the African American community is dealing with this issue.
Yeah, I think that it is not unusual for oppressed communities to take on some of the attributes of their oppressors, and so we have a lot to work through in this country. We have a very complicated existence, and so it should not surprise us when we ourselves fall victim to blaming each other or attacking each other. I think we do need to call those things out, speak out about it. And again, it doesn't mean that individually people can't dislike your hair or whatever. It just means you can't keep me from getting a job because you don't like my hair.
Absolutely. It's funny, I pulled up some of the comments from your study to answer the question, what is good hair? And so one person said, quote, it means that a Black person has hair that is easy to comb and style. The texture is naturally smooth and sometimes has a loose curl pattern, easy to manage, maintain, and style, does not need chemical or pressing to style. And then someone else said, when I hear the term good hair, I instantly think of racism, because people think that good hair or nice hair means women with straight hair or women with hair flowing down your back. You don't see women with afros or braids as good hair. And then the third one said, I hate the term, so I refuse to answer the question. So, and that has been an ongoing conversation and topic.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? In almost all women, there's some other, data in the study. Almost all women worry about their hair to some extent, but Black women experience higher levels of anxiety around their hair. than white women do.
Yeah.
And, and with all of the other stress that we have going on in our lives, the last thing we need to be worried about is our hair and what someone else thinks of it. We've got enough anxiety around the hair on our own. We certainly don't need to have to concern ourselves with how others feel about it. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Gail is joining us from Franklin. Hi, Gail. You're on the air.
Hi. I didn't expect to be on the air, but I wanted to mention the EEOC to you. I have terrible echo on my phone.
Yeah, we're sorry. We're having some technical difficulties. But go ahead. We can hear you. So just go ahead and answer your question.
I worked in the field of employment opportunity and affirmative action in the corporate world for 6 years. And the EEOC is out there to help with racial discrimination in the workplace. So I don't know if you all have reached out to them for assistance, which is free, versus filing a lawsuit, which costs money.
Well, so thank you for the comment. I think I heard you talk about the EEOC and being free, and so because it is free, they're also very backed up. And sometimes those things take quite a significant amount of time. You've also got to convince them to take your case. I have worked a lot with EEOC organizations in my career, and so it is an option, but it is one that really only fixes it for the person who is in the particular mediation. You don't necessarily get the policy change that you need. I mean, you would think that you might, in some cases where you have a company that maybe settles and gives some financial settlement to the grieving party. But I think what happens with lawsuits is you actually get bigger, broader change. And so what would be great is not to have to use an EEOC or a lawsuit, but instead for companies to say, we will have an anti-bias policy. We will not discriminate against women who wear their hair in any of these styles. That is none of our business. No one should comment. That's what we really do need to save us all the money and the time, because these government agencies can't possibly meet the demand of all the complaints that they would get if everyone who had one called the EEOC. But thank you. I appreciate that resource. And
Absolutely.
It's a true statement.
And actually, even if the EEOC files, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's hard to prove unless they say, you can't be here today because of your hair. But I think you pointed out the job interviews, trying to figure out who doesn't get an interview because of how their hair looks.
It reminds me of the issue that we face around names. Also, I mean, so if you start with the name, and if that goes into the round file, as they call it, and then if you get an interview, and the next level is, obviously everyone is judged on appearance, but black women in particular, have an extra layer, because then they've got to decide, do I wear my hair curly? Do I wear it straight? Do I have to change it if I'm wearing it naturally so that I can be more acceptable in the workplace?
Absolutely.
And that's the key. I'm just looking to see if we had another call. 440-2665, 1-800-940-2240. Janelle joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Janelle. You're on the air.
Hello, Barbara. How are y'all?
Okay.
My comment was about just being a professional. I'm a pharmacist, and the conversations I've had, I graduated from Hampton University, with my colleagues and my friends that we graduate with, is always about how will we be looked at if we wear hair natural or with braids or anything other than straight. So as we transition from being younger, wearing relaxers, and now not, I have a conversation with my girlfriend, and she's like, is it too big? Is it too girly? How, will I still be looked at as a professional? So it's something that we live with on a regular basis.
So Janelle, how do you wear your hair, and what did you decide?
I wear my hair natural, curly.
Mm-hmm.
I make it flatter when I'm at work, if that makes sense. I will have it a little bit straighter, a little bit looser. If you see me out and about on the town, I pick it out, I make it bigger, and I think that's just in my mind. It's more acceptable if it's not so noticeable, I guess.
Trying to make yourself smaller.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot.
Janelle, thanks so much for the call. We appreciate that. That is a lot to unpack. And, I know that there may be some out there and they're going, well, that's just, making sure that we all change our hair when it's time for a job interview or whatever. But this is deeper than that.
It is. And I think our perceptions really do stem largely from implicit visual processes, and our brains we're constantly exposed to smooth and silky hair being linked to beauty, being linked to popularity, being linked to wealth. And so that creates these associations that, that is the default. And so anything other than that is not beautiful. And that is where we are. It's like we've been abused for so long. We don't even always see our own beauty. And then, even some days when you are not believing, having to fight these battles, it's just absolutely exhausting. And in that, last caller's voice, I could hear that. I could hear, this. I have to change my hair for these things, and it is just heartbreaking.
It really
in 2023.
Is. So, Sadiq, first of all, you wear braids, right? At least the picture that I see that I have of you.
Yes, you actually. I changed my hair so much, but for the last probably year and a half, I think I've had braids. I've had my hair cut very, very short, where it was just the natural curl. It's all you can see. And then I've had weave, everything. So today I don't have braids. I took the braids out a week ago.
Okay, but in your journey, in your professional journey, has hair ever been an issue for you?
100,000%, absolutely.
Wow.
I remember being a teenager, and I was working in a co-op job and sitting outside of an office answering telephones when one of the secretaries had to go off to lunch or whatever. And the VP of this company came out. He had great news, and he ran out of his office and rubbed my head. He said, "For good luck." I was in high school. I have, in the last few years, I was at a fundraiser. I had braids had my braids in a ponytail, and I had a man he was drinking and grabbed my whole ponytail and, "Is this real?" So hair has certainly been an issue. And then because I am someone who changes my hair constantly, originally I was intimidated to do that as often as I wanted to because I just got sick of the conversations. I just got sick of the conversations around, what is this? Is this your hair? Is this where it's I'm here. What difference does it make? Like, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. Would you? And I've said, would anybody ask a white woman who walked into a meeting, "Is that your hair?"
Exactly.
I mean, because you think they don't wear extensions.
Exactly. And but that is the perception that they don't, and we do.
That is the perception. That's right.
And perception is what carries us, unfortunately. Sadiq, tell me about the Perceptions Institute, because I find you guys very fascinating in the way that you handle information and what we're thinking about in this country.
Well, I am a new CEO to the Perception Institute. I've been there just since November. The way that I describe Perception Institute is that we are an action-oriented think tank. We do a lot of research, but we also facilitate conversations that allow people to be left with the strategies to really help reduce bias in our country. So that's what I love about us, is that we not only can do the research, but we can help give you the strategies to help improve behavior, or to help, there's a better way to say it, to help align behaviors with intentions. So there are folks out here who have really good intentions, but maybe are saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. We help with that. And then for those folks who maybe don't have the best of intentions, we have some work to do with them as well. And so it is an exciting place, and it's an exciting time in our country for Perception Institute to exist, to have these conversations, not just around hair, but just around, but even to say to this country, ask questions like, are we ready for, you name the thing, you name the thing. Is the country ready for Black Supreme Court justice? Are we, there are all sorts of, I think our democracy is under attack in America, and we have to think about how do we find common ground. What we believe at Perception Institute is that's going to take some conversation. Confrontation works in some places and in some ways, and there's a time and place for everything, but there also is a time and place certainly for conversation and not confrontation, and to really find out how can we move the needle to preserve the democracy, and how do we improve the lives of people in this country? How do we stop bias? We're really looking for institutional accountability, so that we create better experiences and opportunities for everyone, because everyone deserves to feel like they belong. Everyone deserves to actually belong. No one should be struggling with how will I be seen today? Yeah, if I decide to braid my hair, or if I decide to wear an afro, if I decide to wear, Bantu knots, whatever, how will they perceive me? It should be about the work.
So can you explain, because I know one of the things that you all did, you looked at implicit as well as explicit bias. We talked about the hair study, but you do that throughout a variety of issues that you all deal with. So can you explain to the audience again, what is the difference between explicit bias and implicit bias?
Well, implicit bias is those things that you just may not be aware of. You may not even be aware that you have them, So, we all know if somebody uses the N-word, that's explicit. We get it, we got it. But there are biases that we hold that we may not even realize we hold. And so it's just something, and then of course with a bias, it's something you have a preference for.
Right, exactly, and that's exactly what bias means. So, I know that you're located in Louisville.
I am in Louisville.
You're in Louisville now? Okay. How are you guys doing there? We know about the bank shooting that just happened recently, and a lot of other things that are going on in our country. But what's going on the ground?
Well, the energy is interesting. We are all trying to figure out what we need to do to move politicians to actually act like they work for us. Because we need gun reform. It happens to be that in Louisville, Kentucky, and in Kentucky in general, it is when law enforcement confiscates weapons that they find, illegal weapons that are found, they are not able to destroy those weapons. There's a law against that, and so that's ridiculous. So the gun that was used to kill people in the mass shooting that happened on Monday, and then of course we had another mass shooting by the end of the week, those guns will be recycled and sold at auction.
Wow! So they'll go right back into the system.
That's exactly right.
I'm sure that there's a lot of frustration going on then.
There's a lot of frustration. There's even frustration in how we talk about and how we think about what happened. And so for example, this was, and I personally knew two of the people who were killed at the bank shooting. Thank you. So it's not, your heart breaks for everyone involved. And in the middle of that heartbreak, you also see the different ways that we respond when those kinds of shootings happen in other parts of our city. So, and how we begin to describe and talk about it. So in one place we might say, this is about how what laws we need to change. But if a park in a poor Black neighborhood gets shot up, then it's about the people there. And it's not about the policy, it's not about the guns, it's about something else. And so we've got to make sure that even in our grief that we are fair to people who need and deserve as much protection as we all deserve in this country.
Exactly. We got a question on Facebook. They want to know from you, Sadiqa, what does your guest recommend someone do if he or she feels they're being discriminated against at work because of how they wear their hair?
Well, I would always say at work, you should have a personnel policy handbook. I think it's important to let a supervisor know. In many cases, I bet it might be the supervisor. So then definitely you want to document that with HR, have a conversation with the HR director, document the fact that you've had the conversation, ask someone to talk to the person that is discriminating, see if that behavior can be changed, and to continue to raise the issue if it is not resolved immediately. I think, unfortunately, sometimes in the workplace, people need lawyers. I happen to be a lawyer. I've done and practiced some employment law, and so sometimes you really do have to take matters into your own hands, but it's always best to begin with putting people on notice about what the behavior is and giving them an opportunity to correct it. But if they don't correct it, nobody should have to live like that. You shouldn't be subjected to that, and you've got a right to fight for your rights.
So, we have laws that ban discrimination based on race. So why do we need a separate hair law? Because isn't that a cultural reflection of the race?
I do, and I also think that because the laws that were in place, there have been lawsuits, and courts have said that hairstyle is not protected. And so this is an attempt to say we want these hairstyles protected. We want people to be protected. And so that's why you have the Crown Act being, moving across the country.
Go ahead.
No, please, go ahead.
I was going to say we have so many issues that face particularly the African American community going forward, and people may say, well, why would we even waste time on this? But as you brought up before, this gets down to a bread and butter issue.
Absolutely. It absolutely does. But the other part of it is when people ask, why are we wasting time on this? I always say, Black people are smart enough to do two things at once. We can focus on the Crown Act and talk about improving educational outcomes as well. We can talk about the Crown Act and gun violence. We can talk about more than one thing, just like other communities can. So this is never a waste of time if it improves our existence in this space.
No. 440-2665, 1-800-940-2240. Let's go to Justin in Newport News. Hi, Justin. You're on the air.
Hello. How y'all doing?
All right. How are you?
I'm good. I would like to know more details on the Crown Act. And I'd also like to know what should the professional hair standards be at an employer's that would be amenable to Black hair.
I don't think. Thank you. Oh,
thank you. No, go ahead, Sadiqa. You're right. Thanks for the call, Justin. Go ahead. You can answer.
I don't think I'm in a position, or any one woman or one person is in a position to say what should the acceptable standard be. But Justin, am I right? Are you a man? You are male,
yes.
And are you a white male?
Yes, he is.
Okay. And so no one is having a discussion about how you should wear your hair, what you should do. So I think the answer is don't worry about it. If you run a company and the person's hair is not getting caught in the machine, it's not stopping production, if they're at a bank and they can count the money and they're able to do that, if they work in personal banking and they are able to bring clients in, then judge them by the same things that you judge every other employee by. If they're your colleague and you don't have anything to do with supervising and supervision, then you just don't worry about it at all. I mean, I think that's what we really want ultimately, is to be left alone.
Mm-hmm. And there's a perception also, Sadiqa, do you agree with this, that if you wear your hair natural, you're just letting it go? When that is so far from the truth in terms of what it takes to maintain and to style and to take care of your natural hair.
there's a perception that you're letting it go, and there's also a perception that you are radical sometimes.
Yes.
I think a lot of this is about silencing people. There's this idea that if you are wearing an afro or you are wearing braids, that you are going to bring this energy into this building and you're going to protest and be upset. I mean, there are many, many layers to why people feel like they can regulate us. But I think the pushback is just, what we want to be able to do is just to live freely in this society where we work hard and pay taxes and do all the things that everybody else does. And so it doesn't matter that you personally might think that, straight hair is better. That's fine. Go be with somebody with straight hair. But when it's time to hire people who are capable of doing the job, and the way the hairstyle looks or how you feel about it shouldn't impact that.
So what is the Perception Institute working on now?
Oh, we're working on some research around women and empowerment. We're working in power framing. What other good things are we working on? I'm having we are, I can't even think of anything right now. Listen, I'm sitting here looking out the window in this beautiful office that someone loaned me. In my mind, I am as relaxed as I've been, and I finally have a good connection and can hear you and no echo.
That's great.
Yes, it is. It is pretty wonderful. We're going to release on Project Implicit's website. We'll be releasing our hair implicit association test, and this is the same test that was in the Good Hair Study. So we'll see if there are any changes in people's thoughts around hair and all of that. So, and one thing about, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, how do you encourage people to have conversations? We try to do that through Another View, but there are other ways that I'm sure you are doing at the Institute to get people to just start talking to one another so that you can understand one another, listen to one another, and try to find common ground.
Yeah. Well, I do think you are doing it with this show. I think this is an important show. It's an important outlet, and you bring up issues that people don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about anyplace else. And so I do want to thank you for the work you're doing, because it is important.
Thank you.
And absolutely. And thank you for recognizing the work of the Perception Institute as well. And people can go on our website and see more about the study and see more about who we are and what we do, perception.org. I'll tell you, one of the most amazing tools we have is the facilitated conversations. We can go into organizations and bring people together and sort of get to a place of agreed upon definitions of words and what we're going to use, and then just be able to talk through strategies around how we create space for one another. And it is really beautiful to see. We've done that with the National Association of Realtors. We have a phenomenal video with the New York State court system uses for jury duty. All prospective jurors, watch this video that the Perception Institute, created in conjunction with the court system, and it is absolutely wonderful. And so I think about the people who may never make it onto a jury, but they have an opportunity to learn about, the work that we do.
Guess what? We're out of time.
Okay.
Just that quickly. But Sadiqa, we're going to have you back so we can find out more about what the Perception Institute is doing, and we so appreciate you being with us and dealing with our audio issues. Again, we apologize for the changes that we had to go through, but thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate that. Take care. And thanks so much for spending an hour of your life with us here on Another View, audience. If you want to hear this show again, go to our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. And you can listen to past shows by clicking View Show Archive at the bottom of the page. Next week on Another View, cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby and Another View on Health. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Danielle Saunders answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Thanks so much for listening, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.